Honey, do you trust me? I mean, really trust me? Here's a question for you. How the hell should I answer this? If you say yes, you really trust her. You know for sure that you won't like the next thing she says. But if you say no, you don't trust her, you'll probably regret it even more. Ken needed a few seconds to think. Before I answer, would you like to tell me what prompted you to ask such a question? Why do you think that I don't trust you? I didn't say that. I didn't say I thought you didn't trust me. I asked a question. Yeah, well, the question is being asked for a reason, and I'd like to know it before I answer. Honey, it's a simple question. Do you trust me, yes or no? This is not a simple question, and you know it. There is no way that I will give you an answer without knowing the original reason for the question. Jennifer sighed. It wasn't going the way she had hoped. He should have said, yes, of course, I trust. Then she would have driven him into a corner. But no, he was too smart for that and did not even think about giving up. It was time to step back and try a different approach, she thought. She decided that honesty was the best policy. I need you to trust me, honey. I have to go away for the weekend and I don't want you asking questions. What? Wait a minute. You're going away for the weekend and I don't have to ask where you're going or what you're going to do. Exactly. I know it's a lot to ask, honey. But in 8 years of marriage, have I ever given you any reason to mistrust? She answered. No, at least not yet. Darling, you have to understand how absurd this sounds. I don't care how reliable a person is. No man in his right mind would agree to something like that. Look at this. For my part, what would you do if I asked you the same question? She thought for a second, and then replied, well, like you, I wouldn't like it. I'd wonder why you couldn't tell me what you'd do, but I'd think it must be very important to you, since you ask. I would also know that you love me very much, and would never hurt me. So yes, I would trust you. Ken sat down on one of the kitchen chairs with a sigh. He should have known better than to ask such a question. He took the bait. How long will you be away? He asked. I have to leave on Friday. I'll leave before you get back from work and be back Sunday afternoon. She replied. You're talking about this Friday, right? How long have you been planning this? I didn't really plan. It was kind of, well, an opportunity that suddenly appeared, she replied. An opportunity, and you can't tell me anything about this opportunity. Where are you going? Who will you be with? Nothing? Jennifer shook her head slowly. Sorry, honey, I just can't tell. What if I say no? I don't trust you to just go away for 2 days without telling me where you're going or what you're going to do. Are you going anyway? She looked at him for a second. I really don't know. But whether I go or not, I would be extremely disappointed by your lack of trust in me. I don't know, he said quietly, pondering his dilemma. I really don't know. I guess I just don't understand why you can't tell me where you're going. If I let you do that, I'll be thinking about it for a long time, maybe years. I don't think that's fair. Jen, don't you think so? He looked at his beautiful wife. Obviously, she looked worried. I'm sorry, honey. If I could tell you, I would, but I just can't. Please trust me, she asked again. They looked at each other for a few more seconds. Then she told him that she was going upstairs to read before going to bed and asked him to think carefully. He thought. For the next 2 hours, Ken went through every scenario, every possible situation he could think of in his head, but nothing worked. He always returned to the most obvious explanation. She was going to be with another man. Just the thought of it made his blood run cold. Damn, he muttered to himself. I wish I knew what this was all about. The more he thought about Jennifer spending the weekend with another man, the less it made sense. They had a happy marriage. They were both faithful to each other. Of that he was sure. No, he thought it must be something else. She will not cheat. She knows very well that this will be the end of our marriage. She will not risk it. Could this be some kind of test, he wondered. But that wouldn't be her style. It just didn't make sense. He was tired and exhausted. Hell, maybe she'll wake up in the morning and tell me it was just a joke. I wish I could, he thought. But he knew her better. No matter what was happening, she was serious. By the time Ken got into bed, his wife was already asleep. He still hasn't decided what to do. He lay down and stared at the ceiling, still trying to find a reasonable excuse for his wife's mysterious request. He finally fell into a restless sleep, with the question still hanging in the air. The next morning, he was not yet fully awake. He was still in some kind of sleepy kingdom. He didn't remember hearing the alarm, but he realized that his wife gave him morning pleasure. God, it was better than any alarm clock. Jennifer collapsed onto him and lay down as they both fought to control their breathing. "It's been a long time since I woke up to such beautiful alarm clocks," he said. "Too long ago," she replied, still trying to catch her breath. "Does this have anything to do with our conversation last night?" he asked. "Well, I was hoping it would buy me some points," she replied with a sly smile. The expression on Ken's face went from pure ecstasy to irritation. Her thoughtless confession turned a wonderful moment of passion into nothing more than an attempt to get what she wanted: bribery. If she thinks she can buy my trust with sex, she's deeply mistaken, he thought. Without another word, he gently pushed her off of him, swung her legs off the bed, and headed into the shower. Jen sensed his insecurity and realized her mistake in admitting the manipulation attempt. Her little plan fell apart, and she began to ruminate on his question from last night. If he says no, will she still go? She really couldn't answer that. She just prayed that she wouldn't have to make that decision. She put on her robe and went to the kitchen. By the time Ken showed up, breakfast was being served with a smile and a kiss on the cheek. In fact, it was all in vain. He made a decision in his heart. He just hoped he wouldn't regret it. "I'm guessing you haven't changed your mind since last night?" he asked. "No, dear," she replied, shaking her head. "This is what I have to do. Well, I decided to let you go and not ask questions." "Oh, honey, thank you." He raised his hand to interrupt her. "But I want you to know, you hurt me, Jen. You ask me to trust you, but you don't trust me enough to share with me. Instead, you use sex as a tactic to try to convince me. It seems that trust is very one-sided." "Darling, it's not because I don't trust you." "Oh, then what is it? If this isn't mistrust, then I can only think you're about to do something you're not very proud of." She lowered her eyes. She had no answer. "If it's so important that you're going to move forward even though you know you're hurting me, then go ahead. But I'll tell you right now, if I ever find out that you did this to be with another man, its trust will be irretrievably lost along with our marriage. Understand?" She nodded her head weakly. "I didn't mean to offend you, darling. Honestly. I'm sorry I had to do this, but like I said, this is important to me. Please don't be offended." He didn't answer. In fact, nothing more was said about breakfast. They kissed when it was time to leave for work, but Jen sensed a lack of passion in his kiss. She hoped he would feel better when he returned home later in the evening. Jen spent the entire day battling her inner demons. She wasn't kidding when she told Ken that her weekend trip was very important to her, but it also killed her, knowing that she was hurting the man she loved. Her stomach had been in knots all morning. By midday, she had come to a final conclusion. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She would never have that opportunity again. She didn't want to spend the rest of her days saying what ifs or what ifs, so she will do whatever it takes to make up for this to her wonderful husband, even if it takes the rest of her life, but she is determined to follow through with her plans. Despite her many attempts to improve the atmosphere that evening, Ken was definitely in a silent mood. He hoped that showing his feelings of disappointment would make her change her mind. He wondered if she would try to bribe him again by having sex once they were in bed. If she tried, he would reject her. But she knew he would see it as another attempt at bribery, and she didn't do it. He was restrained again the next morning at breakfast, again hoping that his attitude would convince her to change her mind. But that afternoon she called him at work to tell him she was leaving. "I love you," were the last words she said before he hung up without answering. "Hey, buddy, Arnie can't make it on Sunday?" Ken was lost in thought. He was still hoping that his wife would change her mind at the last minute, but that didn't seem to happen. Sorry, Jack." "What did you say?" he asked his longtime friend and colleague. "Arnie, he won't make it this Sunday." Jack repeated. Are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine, Ken replied, forcing himself back to reality. Arnie can't do it? Damn. Where are we going to find the fourth one this late? Well, I was going to ask you if you knew anyone who would be available, but I'm guessing the answer is no. I'll call the pro shop and let them know we're one down. I'm sure they'll find one to fill space, Jack said, still looking at his friend a little suspiciously. Are you sure you're okay, old man? Yeah, that's... He stopped and looked at the second best golfer in their foursome. Ken was never one to take his problems out on anyone else, not even a good friend like Jack. Yeah, I'm fine. I just have a few things on my mind. That's all. Okay, if you say so, if you need anything, just let me know. I will, Ken replied, nodding his head and trying to look casual. The rest of the day was a complete waste of time as far as work was concerned. All he could think about was his wife's refusal to say where she was going or what she would do for the next 2 days. He fought back tears as images of Jennifer having sex with another man flashed through his mind over and over again. The more this happened, the more he denied it. That's not what it's about, he kept telling himself. I know she won't deceive me. Damn, he thought. This is torture. This is moral bullying. How can she do this to me? Why does she do this to me? Will I ever know what it was about? Not knowing was worse than knowing if she really was with some guy. He felt lost, helpless, and hurt. But most of all, he felt anger, and it was anger that became his driving force. By force. The more he gave in to his feelings of anger, the less lost and helpless he felt. He was going to make her pay. Oh, how he was going to make her pay. As that old song says, you only hurt the ones you love. Well, he thought, two can play this game. He hadn't lost his love for her, but he wanted her to feel the pain she had caused him. He wanted her to know the agony he was going through, and damn it, he was going to do just that. He began to make plans. As soon as he gets home, he will move all of her things into the guest bedroom. He was going to make her regret that she had never been born. On his way home, Ken stopped for dinner. After all, he had the entire day off to work on Operation Retaliation. Good evening. Can I give you something to drink? Asked the sweet waitress, handing him the menu. Coffee, please, he replied. When Ken opened the menu just looking at it, his stomach dropped. He was so busy fueling his anger that he didn't notice his anxiety until now. His hand shook slightly as he took a glass of water from the counter. Once again, his thoughts began to wander, always to the darkest thoughts of his wife's infidelity with another man. What about you? A cheerful voice asked. Have you decided yet? Ken heard the waitress's voice but did not understand what she said. He was too absorbed in his thoughts. And what? He asked, looking up. Have you decided what you want to eat? She repeated, almost as if speaking to a child. I'll just have coffee, he told her, handing back the menu. Ken sat sipping coffee and lost himself in his dark thoughts. At some point, tears tried to break through his depression again, but he successfully held them back for the second time that day. It was almost night when Ken pulled into his driveway. Even though he knew that wouldn't happen, somewhere in the corner of his subconscious, he held on to the slightest hope that she would be home, waiting for him with open arms and a big kiss. However, one glance at the gloomy dwelling destroyed his last hopes. Again his anger rose and took possession of his emotions as he entered the lonely house. He looked around angrily. It was as if all the anxiety he had felt throughout the day suddenly came to a climax. He needed to throw it out, and the lamp standing on the table in the hallway became his victim. Seething with rage, he threw it across the room, ripping the cord out of the socket and landing in the corner of his favorite painting. The impact knocked her to the floor with a crash as shards of glass flew into the air, along with shards of the broken lamp. Now, driven by anger, he went upstairs to their bedroom. Without hesitation, he pulled her clothes out of the closet and carried them to the guest bedroom. It took several trips before all the women's clothes in the closet were unceremoniously scattered across the guest bed. When he returned to the bedroom, he didn't even bother to take anything out of her underwear drawer. He simply yanked the entire drawer out of the chest of drawers and threw it on the floor of his wife's new quarters. He was furious, and he was going to make sure she knew it. Later that night, as he tossed and turned and tried unsuccessfully to sleep, he thought of something he hadn't thought of until that moment. What if it was all for his sake? What if she couldn't tell him anything because she would come home with some big surprise for him? Damn, he felt like an idiot. Ken rolled over and looked at his watch. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. It had been a very stressful day. His whole body felt like a wet rag, but he still couldn't sleep, not with the chaos that was raging in his brain. He rolled onto his side, and for the first time since this whole situation started, without even realizing it, a tear rolled down to the corner of his eye and then slowly rolled down his cheek onto the cotton pillowcase below. The idea that his wife's mysterious trip might have been for his own good only added to the confusion. Never before had he felt so lost among emotions. They tore him apart. Ken threw the sheet off his naked body and slowly stood up from the edge of the bed, wiping the salty trail of agony from his face. Giving up all hopes of sleep, he headed to the kitchen for a fresh mug of coffee. "Damn it," he muttered out loud to himself. "Damn her straight to hell." Ken sat down and once again turned over their conversation in his head. She said it was important to her. He spoke to himself again. Why did she say that if she was doing something for me? No, I'm pretty sure that everything she did was for herself and not for me. At some point during his second cup of Colombian nectar, he decided that he would continue with his plan. He doubted it very much, but even if she returned home with some kind of surprise for him, it would not change anything. She deserved to experience a little of the hell she put him through, he reasoned. Once he made his decision, he was ready to try to go back to sleep. It was already dawn when he finally passed out. On Saturday, Ken began executing his plan. The first thing he did was go to a home improvement store and buy a lock and key for his bedroom door. Now this door will be closed until he decides otherwise. In the afternoon, he went to the golf course to practice with iron clubs. He hoped it would take his mind off his problems and help him relax, but it did nothing for his anxiety or his stroke. In fact, his inability to hit a single good shot from an entire basket of balls only added to his frustration. On the way back, Ken stopped at a pizzeria a few blocks from his house and ordered a small pizza to take out. He didn't want to cook, and Jennifer always watched her wait, so it was rare that he could enjoy his favorite junk food. It was a long, lonely night. He thought that plans for revenge would bring him more satisfaction, but in reality, it did not. A deep sadness came over him as he wondered where this would all lead. To divorce? I wonder if she knows how tenuous our connection is now. Again, he prayed that he would not find out that his beautiful wife was with another man, because that would definitely end their marriage. He couldn't stand it. He shook his head in doubt as he went to the bedroom to try and get some sleep again. After another restless night, Ken had a hard time getting up on Sunday morning. Even after a nice hot shower, his legs felt as heavy as his heart. After breakfast, he loaded his clubs into the trunk of his car, along with his overnight bag. He hung the suit in the back, then went back into the house and locked the bedroom door. "Hey, old man," called an energetic Jack from the golf cart, heading towards him. "Damn, dude, you still look grumpy. Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, as he pulled up to Ken's car to transfer his clubs to the cart. "Oh, Jen and I had a little fight, that's all. Nothing serious," Ken replied, securing his clubs to the back of the golf cart. Jack looked into the trunk before closing the lid, then saw the suit hanging in the back. "Are you going to move out?" he asked suspiciously. "No, not really, just taking a little vacation for one night." "Let's go," he insisted, not wanting to talk about it anymore. "Have they found the fourth person?" "Well, yes and no." "What do you mean, yes and no? Either they found it or they didn't." "Well, they found the fourth man," Jack answered. Ken looked at him for a second, pondering his friend's words. "Oh no, the fourth person is a woman?" "Yeah. Her name is Tara. but the pro says she plays in the low 80s, so you better get your A game ready, old man. I'd be embarrassed to tell everyone at work how the lady beat you. Jennifer was loading her suitcase into the car. She never thought it was possible, but fate gave her the chance to experience a desire that began in school. But at what cost? She was aware of her husband's lack of response when she told him she loved him over the phone, but the anticipation of the weekend tempered her fears with excitement. Now that it was over, all she was left with was fear. She hadn't eaten breakfast and had planned to stop to buy something along the way, but decided she needed to get home. She wanted to be there for him when Ken returned from golf. She wanted to start fixing everything immediately. Her heart began to beat faster with anxiety as she pressed the gas a little harder. By the time she pulled into the driveway, she had the entire evening in her head. There were 2 chicken legs in the freezer that can be quickly defrosted in warm water. She knew they had at least 1 bottle of her favorite white wine. While dinner was being prepared in the rotisserie, she would put on her sexiest lingerie, his favorite, a black corset with garters for black thigh-high stockings. Just seeing her in that outfit always made him melt. Yes, she thought. I will not leave any doubt in his mind that he is my only lover. By the end of this night, he will be on his way to forgiving me, and there will never be any more secrets. I will treat him like a king, because he is my king. Despite 80-odd degrees outside, she felt cold when she entered the house. Something had changed. Their home had always seemed so warm and welcoming, but for some reason it felt different, lonely and cold. She put down her overnight suitcase and noticed that the lamp was not on the table. Jennifer looked around and saw that Ken's favorite painting was missing. Her eyes followed the scratch on the wall down to the broken pieces of both missing items. She sighed and quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Her anxiety increased when she realized that Ken must have thrown the lamp against the wall and hit the painting. "Oh my God, what have I done?" she whispered. It was rare that Ken lost his temper, and she had never seen him angry to the point of throwing something before. She began to tremble, beginning to realize the pain she had caused her loving husband. Not 3 hours ago, she had been fine with her decision. Now she was racked with guilt. Tears leaked from her eyes as Jennifer walked over and carefully bent down to inspect the expensive watercolor. The painting itself was not damaged, but it will have to be rearranged. She'll do it on Monday and surprise him when he gets home after work. She carefully picked up and discarded the glass and broken parts of the lamp, then vacuumed up the remains. She checked the time. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She knew he'd be home soon, and she hadn't even started defrosting the chickens yet. Suppressing her emotions temporarily, Jen took a deep breath and headed to the kitchen. She decided to begin her redemption with his favorite dinner and a romantic evening at home. Once she had set the chickens to defrost in the warm water, Jennifer returned to the hallway, picked up her suitcase, and walked up the stairs. She was looking forward to relaxing in the bath with her favorite bath oil, whose seductive scent drove Ken crazy with desire. As she turned at the top of the stairs, Jen was surprised to see their bedroom door closed. She noticed the lock about the same time she tried to turn the knob, but for a second, her brain couldn't figure out why the door wouldn't open. Then it dawned on her. "Oh my God," she thought, "he locked our bedroom from me." But she turned to see her clothes lying on the bed in the guest room. Jen felt panic rising in her chest as she slowly, nervously walked into the room that had previously been reserved for casual sleepovers. She sat heavily on the edge of the bed and stared at the drawer of panties and bras lying on the floor. Not even here, she thought. The corset she was going to wear was in another drawer, and she couldn't even get into their room to get it. Her mind retreated back to all the events that should have prepared her. The broken lamp, his refusal to say he loved her during their last phone conversation, the look on his face when she answered his question about morning pranks. All the signs were there, she just didn't read them well. She felt an avalanche of guilt, shame, and remorse hit her. She covered her face with her hands and began to sob hysterically. "Oh God, I hope I haven't ruined our marriage," she cried out loud. The desperate woman collapsed on the guest bed. Her whole body shook with fear as tears flowed freely down her cheeks. She knew he was hurt. He had told her so, but she had no idea how deeply he was hurt or the extent of his anger. She lay there sobbing as her mind raced through a dozen different ways to show him how sorry she was. Finally, having exhausted her tears, Jen gradually returned to reality. She looked at her watch. She was so absorbed in her repentance that time slipped away from her. She was shocked to find that she had spent an hour crying. Where is he? She wondered. He should have returned home by now. She felt lifeless, her entire body devoid of energy, but believing that she was running out of time, Jennifer wiped the tears from her face and dragged her feet to the kitchen to start dinner. After seasoning the chickens, she placed them in a rotisserie and set the dining room table, including candles. She looked at her watch. It was already after 4. Where is he? He was never late home from golf. Then a terrible thought came over her. What if he had locked the bedroom to hide the fact that his things were missing? What if he left her? Oh, God, she whispered. No, he couldn't do that. Not without explanation. No, he couldn't do that. Her whole body began to tremble. She began to panic for the second time since returning home. She sat down on the sofa in the living room and began to cry again, but continued to tell herself that her loving husband would never leave her. Not in this way, not without direct confrontation with her. It only took her a few minutes to convince herself that Ken was probably sitting somewhere drinking beer with friends and would be home soon. Okay, she thought, I can't wear my corset, but there's some pretty sexy lingerie in that drawer that I can wear. With renewed determination and a resolve to make things right, Ken's beautiful wife ran upstairs and took a shower. She ignored the passing time as she made herself look beautiful, first with makeup, then with the prettiest lingerie she could find. She threw on her robe and returned to the kitchen just in time to remove the chickens from the rotisserie and set the table. Refusing to believe that he wouldn't come in any second, she lit the candles and took a seat next to her husband's chair. A tear rolled down her smooth cheek as she sat alone and listened to the wall clock in the living room strike 6 times. Jennifer had never felt as lonely as she did at that moment. She had to accept that the romantic evening she had planned would not happen. She had been avoiding calling him, hoping to surprise him, but now she felt like she had no choice. Jen took a deep breath and forced herself to pick up the phone. She was afraid to hear what her husband would say to her. Her hands shook as she typed the familiar numbers. Ken was just about to cross the street to the local Denny's for dinner when his phone rang. He looked and saw that the call was coming from his home phone. He sighed. He knew this would happen. In fact, he's surprised it took her so long. Hello, Ken replied, without emotion in his voice. Dear. He heard his wife's quiet voice from the other end. It's Ken, he answered sharply. Jen's heart sank even deeper at his answer, but she had no intention of reacting. I was just wondering when I cooked the chickens for dinner, honey. I was wondering when you were coming home. Good question, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. I'm not sure. Oh dear. Please come home. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. Please let me fix this. Please. Fix this. And how are you going to do that, Jen? How are you going to erase the doubts and suspicions that I've been struggling with all weekend? I tried to think of all kinds of reasons why you couldn't tell me where you were, and always came back to one and besides. You were with another man. That's the only thing that makes sense, Jen. That's the only thing. Oh, my dear, please, please trust me. What I did was a fantasy since I was a little girl. It was something I had to do. I just can't tell you what it was. Please, darling, please come home. I'll fix this, honestly. I'll do whatever it takes, darling, please. He heard her start to cry. He still had no proof that she was with anyone, and listening to her cry tugged at his heartstrings, but he decided to give her some of her own medicine. I'll probably be home tomorrow after work, he stated decisively. Honey, could you please come home now, please? No. Okay, she mumbled between sobs. Can I ask where you are? No. If I don't need to know where you've been, you don't need to know where I am, or who I'm with. Jen didn't think she could feel any worse, but hearing those last 4 words from Ken made her feel sick. She fought the sensation and had to swallow before she could speak again. Ken, are you with a woman? Oh, honey, please don't do this. I didn't say I'm with a woman, but if I can't ask questions, then neither can you. Ken, it's not fair. You agreed. You agreed not to ask questions. You said I could leave. Please, please come home and let's forget about this day off. Jen, listen to me. I've been through absolute hell thinking about you being in the arms of another man. I can't remember when I've been so angry or so hurt in my life. It's going to take a hell of a long time before I forget about this. In the meantime, I don't want you to try to fix this. I don't want you to sleep with me. I don't even want you around me any more than necessary. That's why I locked the bedroom door. Let me put it another way. You can sleep in the guest room. Ken heard Jennifer crying as he disconnected. He was still torn between emotions. Why did she have to make such a farce? He asked himself. It was so unlike her. Could her weekend trip really be about something innocent? He would feel like a real jerk if it turned out to be true. It was this thought that kept him from sleeping peacefully for the 5th night in a row. Okay, I want to know the truth. What the hell is going on between you and Jennifer? Jack asked as he walked into Ken's office and closed the door behind him. Ken looked up from the documents he had been staring at mindlessly for the last half hour. Jack walked over and sat down on one of the chairs opposite his friend, looking into his eyes. First, I see an overnight bag in the trunk of your car, a suit hanging in the back, and then you're playing worse golf than I've ever seen. Something's seriously wrong, old man, and it's obviously not doing you any good, so spit it out. As awkward as he felt, maybe Jack was right. Maybe he really needed to get it out of his system. Jack, do you trust your wife? Marge, of course I do. What if she said she was going away for the weekend and didn't want you to ask where she was going, what she was going to do, or who she was going to be with? I'd know right away where she was going, Jack replied. You would? Where? To her brother. She knows I can't stomach him, Jack said with a smile. Come on, Jack, this is serious. This is exactly what Jennifer came up to me with the other night. She wanted my blessing to go away for the weekend, but didn't want me to ask where she was going or what she would do. She has a brother, too, but he's a cool guy with a wife and kids. No, there's only one reason I can think about this whole mystery. It was with another man. Oh, Ken, no, that's impossible. There's no way Jen would cheat on you. Come on, you know better. Yes? Then tell me, what else could it be? Can you think of another reason why she left this way? Because I certainly can't. Did she say anything? Give any clues? All she said was that it was something she had to do. It had to be connected to some fantasy from her childhood. And that sounds like dating another man to you? How many little girls dream about having sex with some guy? It's probably something embarrassing and she just doesn't want to tell you, that's all. Ken lowered his eyes, lost in thought, but spoke almost immediately. I can't believe something from her childhood was so important that she would do it knowing how much it would hurt me. Okay, Jack said. If she was going out with a guy, why doesn't she just lie and say she needs to visit a sick friend or something? I mean, if you're going to cheat on your spouse, wouldn't it be better to avoid suspicion and come up with some excuse for leaving? Ken had to admit that Jack was making sense. He had thought about it himself and couldn't understand why she didn't just come up with a good lie. Jack continued, Listen, my friend, we've all known each other for years. Your wife and mine are best friends. If Jen were cheating on you, Marge would know about it. There's no doubt about it. Just as there's no doubt that Marge couldn't hide it from me. And as far as I know, Jen has never even looked at another man. No, whatever she does, I'm sure it's not cheating. I don't know, Ken said, still with a note of skepticism in his voice. Maybe you're right. I really hope so. Because if I ever find out that she was with another man, it will be the end of our marriage. Come on, man. Jen adores you. I'm telling you, there's no way Jen cheated. She wouldn't do that to you. Jack stood up to leave. He looked at Ken one more time before opening the door. Go home, man. Go home and make love to your beautiful wife. Forget about everything on the weekend. Whatever she does, she's just too embarrassed to tell you about it, that's all. And by the way, our 4th player said that she liked it and hopes that we will invite her to play with us again. What do you say to that? Yeah, sure. She'll probably change her mind the next time I beat her. I played poorly yesterday, but there's no chance she'll beat my normal game, Ken said with a confident smile. Okay, buddy, I'll keep you to your word. See you later. He hesitated before going out. You know, some women like it. What exactly? When their bottom gets whipped, he said with a laugh. As the day wore on, Jack's words kept running through Ken's head. He loved his wife. He wanted to believe that it was exactly as his friend said. She was just too shy to tell him. The screen door slammed behind him. Ken set down his briefcase and went upstairs to change out of his suit and into something more comfortable. He didn't see or hear his wife until he went downstairs into the living room. She was sitting on the sofa. The traces of her tears were clearly visible on her cheeks. She had a wet, dirty handkerchief twisted in her fingers, and her hands were shaking even though they were resting on her lap. Her voice was weak and hoarse from sobbing. "Don't!" she sobbed, still looking down. "Do you not love me anymore?" she asked, afraid of his answer. "Jen, if I didn't love you, your things would be on the front lawn and not in the other bedroom." Finally, she looked at him, and for the first time he saw how red and puffy her eyes were. I'm so sorry, darling," she cried. "So sorry that I hurt you so much. I didn't realize, I didn't know." "Oh, darling, please forgive me," she begged, before bringing the dirty handkerchief back to her nose and starting to cry again. "Jennifer, while you—" She anticipated his statement. In her anxiety, she didn't even allow him to finish. "Oh, Ken, please. It had nothing to do with sleeping with another man," she blurted out quickly. "Nothing, honey, please believe me. I didn't sleep with anyone." Her emotional confession took him by surprise. "Then why? Why did you put me through hell all weekend like this? Damn, Jen, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me that before you left? You should have known what I would think. How can I even trust you? Now, after everything? Oh, darling, please, I'm telling the truth," she cried. "Honestly, Ken, you have to trust me." Ken stood and looked at his wife as her words penetrated him. She sounded sincere. "Jen, I just don't know. Honey, please believe me. I didn't say anything before I left because I didn't want you to ask a lot of questions, and I thought the best way to avoid it was to just not say anything. Honestly, it didn't turn out to be as exciting as I thought. The fantasy was much better than the reality, but it was what I had to do. Yes, I know," Ken said mockingly, interrupting her. "It was something you wanted to do since you were a little girl. You told me. It's one of the things that hurt me so much, Jen. You excluded me from an important part of your life. We have always been an inseparable part of each other's lives for the past 8 years. I have always included you in my life, and it hurt me to think that you don't feel the same. Then I wondered if it was just the first step. What else will you exclude me from?" "I know," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, darling. I didn't think of it that way. It was thoughtless of me. I didn't even realize how much it would hurt you." "Yeah. Well, to be honest, I didn't know how much it would affect me either. I was worried when I said you might leave, but I was hoping you'd change your mind. Then, when you actually left, well, the idea of you cutting me out of an important part of your life was bad enough, but the thought of you seeing some lover from the past just ate away at me like an open wound. I tried to tell myself that you will do this. It is simply impossible that you would cheat on me. But no matter how hard I tried, I simply could not think of another reason for your behavior." She lowered her eyes. I thought you trusted me more than you actually do," she said quietly. "Jen, trust is one thing, but what you pulled off over the weekend goes beyond trust. It's more like blind faith or something. I can't test it that easily." Jennifer continued to cry even harder. Ken was still furious, but his wife admitted that she had not been with another man, which brought him some relief. Moreover, it was not made of stone. It wasn't a stranger sitting there crying his heart out. It was the woman he loved. Ken came and sat next to her and hugged her trembling body. Jen immediately buried her face in his chest and hugged him. "Okay, calm down," he said, gently rubbing her shoulder. You haven't done anything wrong so far, but I still need time to come to terms with all of this. She felt his head nod against her chest, indicating that she understood, but offered no further explanation. I still think it's better that we sleep in separate rooms for a while to give me time to cool down, he said. This brought out a big whimper, and she hugged his waist tighter. Oh, please don't make me sleep without you again. I'm sorry, Jen, he said, but it's better this way, at least for a while. They sat hugging each other for a while longer before Jennifer had to serve dinner. She looked like a beaten dog with her tail between her legs for the rest of the evening. It wasn't an act. It was exactly how she felt. That night, as Ken heard his wife crying quietly from the guest bedroom, he wondered how much longer he could stand it. He already missed having her lying next to him. So, how was yesterday? Jack asked, sitting in the same chair as the day before. Well, better than I expected. At least she told me she wasn't with another man. Do you believe her? I don't know. I would really like to. Why don't you believe it? Ken asked his grinning friend. Of course, I was the one who told you that she wouldn't cheat on you in the first place, remember? So everything went back to normal? Well, I wouldn't say it's normal. I'm still angry. I'm making her sleep in the guest room for a while to give myself time to cool down, Ken said. I think I can understand that. Honestly, if Marge did something like that, she'd be sleeping there too. When I got home last night, I asked her if she knew anything about Jen's mysterious weekend trip. She said she thought it might have something to do with her school years, something she was never able to do. What, this or someone? Ken asked sharply. No, what that? Jack replied with a cautious smile. I don't think Jen ever said outright what it was, but Marge is sure it had nothing to do with cheating. She doesn't believe Jen would cheat on you just like I don't. Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus, Ken said, leaning back in his chair and allowing himself a small, satisfied smile. Honestly, I don't think she would either. I think I'll take your advice and just try to forget about it. Despite all the thoughts over the weekend, I just don't see her cheating on me. Okay then, Jack said, changing his position and leaning forward. I don't want to change the subject, but Arnie's wife called me and said he won't be going golfing again next Sunday. Again, Ken replied, looking surprised. Something is wrong. It's not like he's going to miss 2 weeks straight. I think his back is bothering him. Linda said he couldn't go to work all week. He has an appointment with the doctor on Thursday. Damn, I hope it's nothing serious. Yes, me too. Listen, now that you've pulled your head out of your ass, you want one more time play with Tara? I was thinking about calling her and seeing if she could fill in for her again. You seem to really like her, Jack. Are you sure you two aren't having your own affair? Ken teased. To me, Jack objected. You're the one she's been flirting with for 18 holes. Yes, that's right. She was just trying to distract me so she could beat me up. She's in for a rude awakening this time. Jack smiled widely. Yeah, you can't tell me you didn't notice that sexy little wiggle she makes before she hits the ball. You mean the way she shakes her cute ass, Ken jokes. I'm not dead, old friend. Of course I noticed. Although it won't be enough to save her from defeat. Not this time. Yes, well, we'll see. I have a feeling she hasn't even begun to show any real charm yet. Ken felt better after Jack left the office. He tried to separate himself from any jealous or insecure thoughts, and tried to look at the situation from a completely impartial point of view. In 8 years of marriage, he had never seen his wife even flirt with another man. Their sex life was good, and she always seemed satisfied. Of course, anyone who knew her was adamant about her love and devotion to him. No. If he weighed the pros and cons, the circumstantial evidence would be heavily in her favor. Okay, he told himself. If I keep going back and forth like this, I'll go crazy. I gave her permission to go in the first place because I trusted her. It wasn't until she actually left that my overactive imagination kicked in, and I decided she must be seeing another man. There is, of course, no evidence of this, and until this weekend, I had never had any reason to doubt her sincerity or loyalty. As far as I know, she has never lied to me, so when she says that she was not with another man, what reason do I have to call her a liar? Absolutely none. Ken got up from his chair and went to the window. The telecommunications company he worked for was located in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, His office was on the 5th floor. From there, he could see Hancock Center, Willis Tower, and much of downtown. Somehow, this sight always reminded him of how lucky he was. He could imagine how much suffering and heartache there was down there. His parents made sure that he received a good education. He had a great job that provided him with a comfortable lifestyle. He had a wonderful wife who loved him and good friends. Yes, he was very lucky. He loved her too, so, without even admitting it, he persuaded himself to forgive her. Ken made his decision. He turned and walked back to his desk. It was over. Oh, he'll always wonder what she did or didn't do. And he'll always remember the agony he had to go through. But at least for now, no more blame. He led his wife back into the bedroom and tried to put it all behind him. A feeling of relief washed over him as he sat back down and looked at the work that had accumulated on his desk over the past few days. He wanted things to be normal again. He was tired of wondering what she might or might not have done. He wanted his loving and faithful wife back. "Betty," he said to his secretary through the intercom, "would you like to grab a couple cups of coffee and come over to help me prioritize some things, please?" "Of course, Ken," she replied. By the end of the day, Ken and Betty had caught up, and for the first time in almost a week, he was driving home in a good mood. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.